ready to survive in advance on the Gruely True Sports Network. I'm your co-host for Survive in Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I would like to welcome in my other co-host, a member of the Indiana Hoosiers national championship team in 1981, combined with Isaiah Thomas for 26 points in a national championship game. Help me welcome to the show, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
I'm living life large today. We're talking to a bona fide NFL legend. I mean, we don't get to do this very often. No, it's legit. I mean, this is one of the greatest football teams of all time under one of the greatest coaches of all time. And this is a treat and a privilege for me. So I'm just giddy with joy. But then I got to deal with you, Goodpaster. So it kind of, balances itself out again as usual.
All right, Steve. And our guest today was a member of Vince Lombardi's Super Bowl II world champion Green Bay Packers. Help me welcome to the show, quarterback Don Horn. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. Thank you very much. It's good to talk to you again.
All right. Now, at least we haven't got to the part where Risley tells us how he's in sunny California and it's 75 and sunny.
Actually, it's going to be in the 60s today. We got a little bit of a cold streak going on through here. Of course, it's not like where you're headed, Don, if you're going down to Atlanta. I think they're predicting snow and ice down there. You better take your old Green Bay Packers big green parka.
Yeah,
I'm sure you saved from the Ice Bowl game against the Cowboys, whenever that was. Yeah.
It's funny. After that game, the crowd, the fans went wild. They stormed the field and stuff, and I had a ski mask on, and a parka and stuff like that. And these fans one fan actually ripped the ski parka off my head, and took it as a souvenir. And they're trying to grab everything they could. It was just ripping people, ripping. The clothes and everything they could for souvenirs. It was in fact somebody grabbed Vince Lombardi's hat that he always wore, and he went after him. And of course he had a couple of the security guards get it back from him. But it was chaos. It was not only cold, but it was chaotic.
There was probably two people there that you didn't want to screw with. I had the privilege of playing for Bob Knight. I'm sure you're familiar with Bob Knight.
Oh.
And his prowess in basketball. So I've known the man for about 40 years and played 4 years for him. And you with Vince Lombardi, those are probably two guys you don't try and take something off their body when you're doing something like that. You probably just leave those guys alone because they'll come back at you, I would guess.
Yep, they did. Yeah, Vince really, it was good. Of course, everybody was, in jubilation and happy that we won the game, especially the way we did. But, Vince went after him. Well, he was something. Yeah, he went after him. Yeah, playing for Bobby Knight, I never basketball player. I was never a great basketball player, Steve, because I couldn't hit the front end of a one-on-one.
Yeah, Steve was the same way.
Well, no, Don, my problem was I had a terrible case of white man's disease. I couldn't run, jump, or shoot. But unfortunately, I was 6'8" and 240 pounds, and I could knock people around. So
yeah, you threw your weight around.
Kind of like your Jerry Kramer, your Fuzzy Thurston, or guys like that. I was one of the guards who pull and go knock the crap out of somebody so Isaiah could score 21 of the 26 points we combined for. But this isn't about me. This is about your time.
Yeah, but everything always ends up being about Steve.
Yeah,
Don,
I know,
no
it
matter
does.
who we have on.
I just love talking about myself.
Hey, we've got Rocky Blyer on Friday, Don, and I asked Rocky if he wanted to come on the show, and he's like, yeah, I would love to talk about Steve Risley.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Rocky last year at the Dick Jaws Cigars with the Stars party at the Super Bowl up in Minneapolis, and hopefully I'll see him again this Thursday night down in Atlanta. So,
all right.
Hey, Mike, let me tell you one thing, and then I'll shut up here. One of my heroes is Dale Earnhardt before he passed away in 2001. And Dale used to say all the time, I don't care if you're booing me or cheering me. As long as you're making noise, I'm there.
Yeah.
And in the end, that's all you want to do is make sure that people know that you are there.
So basically you're admitting you're just here to make noise, Steve.
Exactly.
All right. Now,
Go ahead, Mike. Get this interview started.
You played for Vince Lombardi, who was one of the legendary coaches. But in college, a lot of people don't know, San Diego State, you've also played for Don Coryell.
Eric Coryell. The greatest time of my life playing football was playing for Don Coryell. I was fortunate. I wish I could have played longer for him. I only played 2 years, my junior and senior year at San Diego State, but I never had more fun in my life was playing for Coach Coryell. In fact, you talk about Dale Earnhardt, NASCAR, or whatever. Joe Gibbs is my roommate in college. He was a graduate assistant. And we
was he?
roommates.
Wow.
We were roommates for a while, and then we had another guy named John Madden was the DNC coordinator. And of course, Coryell and John made Joe move out because he didn't want, at that time, players and coaches living together. So, yeah, I've known Joe forever. He's a good man. Good
yeah,
man.
what a great man, and great family values for sure, and somebody that
Right.
Took success on the football field and transferred right into a completely different world, and has managed to create even more success in the NASCAR environment than he ever did really in football. I mean, I think he's won more championships in NASCAR than he won in the NFL.
Yeah, that's always been his first love. That's always been his first love. But he was a great coach as a graduate assistant. Coryell would be fired on the sidelines. He would be all upset, and then Madden would be all upset about stuff. And the one that kept us cool most of the time and had everything under control, at least from a player's perspective, was Joe Gibbs. He was an amazing coach at that level. And then to see success after all the years doesn't surprise me at all.
And Coryell was somebody who made John Adel a household name.
Yeah. John, you mean Dan Fouts?
Yeah, Dan
Fouts.
Yeah.
But did Hadel not play for Coryell?
No, I don't think so. No.
In
fact,
come on,
Coryell?
Steve. Don't you prepare for interviews? Jeez.
I don't go back that far.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I remember Dan. Dan. I backed up Dan too. I spent 2/3 of my career backing up future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. It's called being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I tell people my claim to fame. I'm like Bob Uecker. These guys. I guess they felt so bad that if I had to play in the game, that they would good chance they wouldn't do so well. So I forced them to greatness to stay in the game. See.
No, wait a minute, Don. Now, hang on here. Now, you arguably have the greatest job in all of professional sports. And I use the Don Strock theory, who backed up Dan Marino for so many years. Sat out there with a great suntan, had a 2 handicap, carried a clipboard around, never even knew where his helmet was, and just stood there and got paid over $1 million a year. All right, don't tell me about your hard life in the NFL, because
in Don's defense, he wasn't making $1 million a year.
Making $1 million a year. His first contract was for $15,000. He thought he was doing great. Yeah, yeah. I'm making $1,000 a month. Yeah, players across the street for that now, right? Yeah.
You're going to pay me over $1,000, a month. Yeah, that's heaven.
But don't backup quarterback in the NFL is the greatest job, because you're getting all the chicks. All right, you're hanging out with the superstars. You're getting a suntan. You're playing golf wherever you are, and you're not working too hard. And you just pray to God that Bart or Dan Marino or somebody just doesn't go down. Don't get hurt, whatever you do, because I got a good gig going right here, and I want to hang on to it. And then you get to the point where you become invaluable to the team, because it's just like, well, hell, leave Don there. He knows what he's doing. He can still throw the ball 20 yards down the field. If we got to put him in, we don't want to train another rookie quarterback until you get your salary up to $18,000 a year. Then you're done.
I wish I'd learned that lesson. I know when I got traded, to the Chargers to back up Dan Fouts, because I guess Unitas was there the year before with Dan's rookie year, and then he retired, and then Tommy Prothro brought me in, to back him up, and so I go to Coach Prothro, handicap for a couple of weeks. I go to or maybe for a month, and I go to Prothro and I say, Coach, I can still play. I can do this. I can do that. I can still, and I never forget this. He tells me, he says, Don, he says, the only reason I brought you here is to take a young boy Fouts under your wing and teach him everything you know on the field as well as off. He says, I don't have to win for 3 years. I went with the veteran team when I was with the Rams and lost my job. Now that I'm with the Chargers, I don't have to win for 3 years. I'm going with an all-young team. I went, but I was stupid. I thought I could still play. So the next year I jumped to the World Football League, and the rest is history. I should have just stayed there and shut up. But now you tell me, Steve. Now you tell me.
Yeah.
All right. So the Green Bay Packers, an iconic team even back at that time, you got drafted after their Super Bowl I win by the Packers, didn't you, Don?
I did, and I was actually at that game. I was actually at Super Bowl I, pulling for the Packers of all things, and I bought my tickets from Bobby Beathard, who used to coach me in high school, and Bobby was at that time, I think, a part-time scout for the Chiefs, because his brother Pete was backing up Lenny Dawson, And I grew up in L.A., and I go to all the Ram games. I don't have any Ram games. I grew up there in L.A., go to Coliseum, spend maybe $1.75 to get into a game. And Bobby calls me up, and Bobby calls me up, and he says, "Hey, Don, I got some tickets to the game next week. The championship game, the Super Bowl. And he says, you want them?" I said, "Sure, Bobby. I'm a senior at San Diego State." He says, "Yeah, they're $12 a piece." And I just dropped the phone. I said, I can't afford $12. I can't afford $12. Now they're $1,200 on up if you can even get them.
Yeah, Don. I live in L.A. and the Coliseum is probably about 30 miles from our house. And the Rose Bowl is about 20 minutes from our house. But you can't get in the parking lot at the Coliseum on Rams Day for under $500. I mean, you can't pay $500. You got to pay $500 to go tailgate in the parking lot, and then try and get in the stadium.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a money town.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
I thought it was bad because Bengal games it's like 30 or 40. 500 is worse than that.
No, you get out here if you want to park at the stadium. I'm sure a spot in the blue or the tailgate lot is going to cost you $500 and up. First off, they're all sold out, so you're scalping right off the bat. StubHub or something like that. You can't get them just through normal channels. So yeah, you're a $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 day to go to a Rams game out here in L.A. if you want to watch to the stadium and watch the game.
Yeah.
All right, so
and they don't sell out.
So you get to the draft. You get drafted in. I think you were a first-round selection with the Packers, correct? So
yeah,
they were setting us up for you to take over for Bart Starr someday. It looks like.
Yeah, in fact, I talked to a lot of teams that being West Coast guy at San Diego State, and I grew up in LA, and I talked to a lot of teams, and they said they were all going to draft me if I was available, in the first round. There were like 3 or 4 teams that said they were going to do that, and I'm sitting there at the old days, I'm sitting in a little bitty room at San Diego State. They want to know, they contact you. They say, give me a telephone number where you go to be the day of the draft, in case we want to reach you. So I'm sitting in the public relations director's office at San Diego State, a little 10-by-10 room with a radio, listening to the radio to the draft. And these teams would get up. The Lions said they were going to draft me if I was available, and then all of a sudden they draft Mel Farr. And somebody else drafts, the Chargers draft, I forget who they drafted, and they said, and then Oakland. And so all these teams said they were going to draft me. They didn't. And getting towards the end of the first round, I'm going, wait a minute. I guess, these guys don't always tell you the truth, maybe, And about that time, the phone rings. I never talked to anybody from Green Bay, but some of the consortiums back then, I guess they exchanged notes and stuff or whatever. The phone rang. You pick up the phone, and it says, "Is this Donald Horn?" And I said, "Yes, it is. This is Carol so-and-so. Please hold for Coach Lombardi." And I almost hung up. I thought somebody was joking my chain. As I was kind of, and then all of a sudden that voice came on, Donald, is it Vince Lombardi, the Green Bay Packers, And so he asked me a couple of questions and said he'd call me back. He said Kansas City was picking right now. And they were going to make me their next draft choice. And 20 minutes later, he called me and says, "Welcome to the Green Bay Packers. When can you get back here?" So I jumped and got right back there and got everything settled right away. So yeah, it was a great time.
That's hilarious because when I got recruited by Indiana, I got the same deal. I had never really talked to Coach Knight at Indiana. I'd been recruited by all the other schools. And one day I come home from school at 3:30. It was in spring. I wasn't doing spring sports. And the phone's ringing when I come home. I'm the only one there. So I pick up the phone, and it was Steve Risley there. I'm like, yeah. This is Bob Knight. I'm like, oh, yeah, right. I'm like, idiot friend. Yeah, okay. So I'm like, yeah, okay, Coach, what do you need? And it was Bob Knight. And the first conversation I ever had with him was, we'd like you to come play basketball at Indiana. And I had kind of already verbally committed to Notre Dame to go play there with Digger Phelps. And
right.
I did my jaw dropped, and I'm like, Bob Knight, Indiana, 1976 undefeated national champion. Okay, Coach, no problem. A little problem. You got to tell Dan Devine or tell Digger Phelps that I'm not going to go to Notre Dame. He goes, "Did you sign anything?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of that idiot." So he didn't say idiot, but he said, "I'll take care of it." And that was my story too. It's a very similar story. It's like when the guy picked up the phone, and you don't even believe it's really him. So that's a great story.
Hey, Don.
Yeah,
You see how it all goes back to be about Risley, no matter.
To me, I know. No, Mike. What it goes back to is Mike, is that champions have similar stories. There's a pattern for how things happen, and there's a pattern of why things happen, and you just don't get that luxury.
If I wanted to hear that story, I'd call Isaiah Thomas and ask him how he carried you to a championship. And
Isaiah's mom negotiated Isaiah coming to Indiana, not Isaiah. Trust me.
All right, so we get to the Green Bay Packers. What was that first training camp like under Lombardi? Where, I mean, you worked with Bart Starr. You were supposed to be the guy to replace him. How receptive was Starr to you?
Oh, yeah, there's not a final. I mean, Bart was very receptive, a true gentleman. He introduced himself. He came over. I was staying at a little hotel for a couple of weeks before training camp started. He came over and took me out to dinner and showed me around, showed me all the ropes. He was just a true gentleman. Always has been, always was, and always has been. And that first training camp. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that. I know playing football at San Diego State. I had no one ever hit me. We didn't have any depth. We were number one team in the country. We had a heck of an offense. We were a small college back then, Division II. I had a red vest on, and nobody would hit me and stuff, and from time to time, and I wasn't used to all that, boom, boom, boom. And I go to those training camp events, and we're hitting those grass drills, and we're doing things. I went, what the heck is this? But Vince would, he would bust your fanny, wear you out, get you tired, and actually try to tire you out before practice even started, and then wear you out after that. It was grueling. It was a grueling truth, to say the least. Yeah, it was an experience, and he was so demanding, and Vince was the kind of guy that he would take you over in private when no one could hear you, and then compliment you. Don, I've seen some great ones or whatever, and you could be as great or better than anybody. That's why you're here. And then, kind of builds you up in private, and then 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, he would just undress you in front of all your peers. And then at that time, we had 2,000 or 3,000 people come out and watch us practice pretty much every day next to old Lambeau Field, and he would just verbally just abuse the heck out of you. And he did it to me. He did it to Jerry Kramer. He did it to Bart. He did it to, so many people. He treated everybody the same. As Jordan, God rest his soul, great man, would say, he treated us all equally like dogs. But
did you find him to be a fairly fair man? I mean, a lot of the stories you're telling, about Knight, the same thing. The day we talked about Knight, the day he stopped yelling at you was the day you better worry.
You bet.
That means he's given up on you.
Yep.
Yeah. The day he stopped yelling at you was the day you got concerned, because as long as he was yelling at you, he had a purpose or a role for you. But when he stopped yelling, that's like, I'm written off. Now I know I'm dead, and that's why players left. That's why players left Knight, because they knew they stopped getting yelled at. It's like, I'm gone. I might as well leave. So was that the same thing with Lombardi?
Yeah, he was always pushing you. No matter how well you did or how great you thought you did or whatever, a game or practice, whatever, he always pushed you to do better and better. I know one game, first game I really played in any length of time. We lost the game. It was towards the end of that rookie season in '67. I think we lost to the Steelers when I threw a touchdown pass, and I had a pretty good game for the amount of time I played, about half the game or whatever. And a lot of the sports writers were after the game. They're in the locker room, and they're around me and telling me, "Oh, you played pretty well. You did this, you did that, or whatever." And then I'm sitting there at my locker trying to be politically correct and saying the right things. And I said, "Yeah, I did some things, whatever, but I made a lot of mistakes out there too." About that time, Coach Lombardi walked by. He stopped. He says, "Damn right you did." He made a lot of mistakes. Thank you very much, Coach. But it was just because he thought I was getting a big head right away, so he put me in his place right there in front of all the sports writers.
Right, but those times, I mean, my guess, I know your answer here. I'm going to ask the question, but it's the same thing for what we went through. When he pulled you aside and complimented you privately, wasn't that like you had died and gone to heaven, because you knew how genuine it was? When he patted you on the ass rather than kicked you on the ass, which like Lombardi, I'm sure, like Knight did to us, he did to you. When he patted you on the ass, didn't it just melt your heart? I got a compliment from a legend, and it's a genuine compliment. It wasn't candy ass.
You'd run through the wall, for a guy at that point in time. Vince had a canny knack. He had an ability to motivate a team at the right time. He had the ability to motivate an individual at the right time, or if he thought you were overly prepared or overly motivated, so to speak, or whatever, he would tear you down at the right time. He just had an uncanny ability to do that. I know one day we're getting ready to play the 49ers, I think, out in Milwaukee, County Stadium, and they had just a mediocre record at best, and I don't know, we were just, we were struggling or whatever, but we went out to practice on a Wednesday. It was offensive day, and we're 10, 15 minutes into practice, and everybody's making mental mistakes. Bart's making mistakes, the linemen, everybody was just making mental mistakes. We're 20 minutes into practice on the practice field, and all of a sudden, Coach Lombardi says, "That's it. Get off my field. Get off my practice field right now. Get out of here, and don't come back till you're ready to practice." He turns around and walks off the practice field, gets in his car, and drives off. And we're sitting there and the coaches are going, "Uh-oh." I mean, we're looking at each other, and, so about an hour and a half later, we had our first meeting after practice. He could have heard a pin drop in those meetings. I mean, we were focused, we did, and he was ticked, but he got our attention because he knew we were goofing around. And I tell you, the next day we came out to practice. We didn't practice at all that day. The next day we came out to practice, everything, we're hitting on all cylinders. We went boom, 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 everything's working fine, whatever. But, he just do that.
Yeah.
He
two things. We got kicked out of practice every week at IU. Every week, for some stupid reason. We just got kicked out, and practice was over. He would do the same thing. Knight would do the same thing. He just, "Get out of here. I'm done." And he would just go. He would leave. And he'd sit in the locker room for an hour, waiting for him to come in to yell at us. And then finally the trainer would come in and say, "Guys, he went home for dinner. You guys all need to shower and get out of here. He's gone. He's gone. He's not, come back tomorrow and be ready to go." And what you learn is guys like Lombardi and with Knight, there's a method to their madness. I mean, and that's what people never understand about guys like Vince Lombardi or Bob Knight or maybe Bill Belichick at this point in time. There's a methodology to their madness. I mean, it's all planned and orchestrated. It's not just flying off the handle like people want to believe that it is. They know what they're doing, and they're the greatest motivators of all time. They're the ability to get the most out of an athlete and get your psyche in the right position to play at the highest level that you can possibly contribute to the team.
That's it. Yep, that's it. And that's I had the opportunity to. I got to know Al McGuire fairly well in my time in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, and I enjoyed his, being around him and his philosophy and stuff. In fact, we had dinner together one night. It was the same week that I think the Milwaukee Bucks signed Lou Alcindor for $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 1970, maybe, I don't know, whatever.
They had Oscar already.
Yeah, and he says, "Don," he says, that's it. That's the beginning of the end of professional sports as we know it today. And I said, "What do you mean, Coach?" And he says, "No one's worth $1 million. As soon as you start paying players that kind of money, and they're making more money than the coaches and the front office people, all the chain of command and respect is going to start breaking down or whatever, et cetera, et cetera." And he says, "No one's worth $1 million. Lou Alcindor's not worth $1 million. Frank Sinatra's not worth $1 million. Elvis Presley's not worth $1 million." And he slams his fist. I'm going, "Oh, okay." And he said that's why he had never coached in the NBA or professionally again, because he thought these guys are getting overpaid and never pampered in. That was 40 years ago, 45, 50 years ago.
Yeah, but don't you think that's a little bit true? Because if you're a coach like Knight or Lombardi anymore, it's hard to pull that off with guys making more money than you in a lot of cases.
Yeah, well, Coach Lombardi would come in. I mean, when in my rookie year, we made the final 43 squad team or whatever. He comes in and he sets us down. He says, "Gentlemen," he said, "there's 3 reasons why you're in this room. We're in the locker room," and he's giving us and he says, "Number one," he says, "number one, the main reason you're in this room is because you're playing this great game of football because it's the little boy in you. You love this game so much, you want to play it as long as you can, and you just love the game. That's the boy in you. You just love it. Number 2 is pride. You want to play this game. You not only love it so much, you want to be the best. You want to be the best cornerback. You want to be the best linebacker. You want to be the best. You want to be a champion. You got that pride in you. And that's why you're in this room. And his third reason, and it's a sorry reason, is for the money only. And if $15,000 isn't enough to motivate you, I don't know what the hell is. Because the Super Bowl paid $15,000 if you won it. So, but he said, yeah, and he says, unfortunately, it's probably 1 or 2 you can play for the money alone. That's a sorry reason. So,
Don, I would think they get $15,000 per diem now.
Oh, they get Jack Kemp used to tell me years ago they get $15,000 just tying their shoelaces before a game.
Yeah. Shoe contract. Yeah.
I mean, just
so the team hands them $15,000 in per diem. Like, okay, you guys, we're going to provide you meals, but if you want to go out and get a Big Mac on your own, here's a check for $1,000 for the weekend. Go get your own Big Mac, or do what you want to do.
I think my rookie year we played. I think it was 6. We called them preseason games back then, exhibition games. We got $50 a game. $50 a game. So you play 6 games. You got totally $300 plus a little per diem.
Hell,
so.
Duke basketball players get about $12,000 a game now.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm teasing. All
right. The final year with Lombardi, was there ever any inkling before you got to right before that Super Bowl that this may be it for Lombardi?
Well, I guess I was young. I didn't. You talk about 67. I mean, of course, he stuck around in 68. He was the general manager, but he still had his thumb on Phil Bankston. He was still calling all the shots. He just wasn't on the field all the time. But I guess I didn't see it. But the older guys, I mean, Fuzzy and Max and Jerry and guys like that, they kind of surmised it. Jerry had a pretty good feel for it. Maybe Bart did too. I don't know, but it kind of caught me off guard. But anyway, he, I guess the handwriting was on the wall, so to speak, or whatever. And he kept complaining all the time. We had a little bitty room, maybe 10 by 10. We had that little universal machine in the middle of the room, and then that was our weight room at the time. We had a few dumbbells on the side of it. The Coach Lombardi would come in every now and then and do some bench presses and stuff, and he's always complaining about, he thought he had stomach ulcer and stuff. His stomach was bothering him and that type of thing. And then 3 or 4 years later, he passes away because of the cancer and stuff. But I didn't really see any inkling, but I guess I was just too young and I couldn't, I wasn't there long enough to see through the line, so to speak. So.
Yeah. And when you look at the Super Bowl II run to go to that Super Bowl, everybody always concentrates on the Ice Bowl. People don't realize you guys played a divisional playoff the week before that against the Rams team. That was a great football team led by, I think, Roman and Gabriel. And, that, of course, the fearsome foursome. You want to talk a little bit about that game? Because that's the one that stands out to me, because a lot of people thought the Rams were better than even the Cowboys that year.
Yeah, they were. And we actually lost to them, 2 weeks earlier in L.A. They beat us in L.A. at the last minute. They blocked the punt, and they scored, and we lost the game. I think it was like 2 weeks earlier. They had a hell of a team. I remember it was a cold afternoon in Milwaukee. It wasn't snowing, but it was just a cold, drizzly, rainy, foggy day and whatever. Yeah, they had a great team. The fearsome foursome was something. Merlin and Deacon and then Eddie Metter in the secondary and Clancy Williams. They had a hell of a team. And then we kind of got a quick start on them. I think Travis broke a run for like 30 or 40 yards and scored early on them and stuff, and that kind of maybe broke their back. And then defense played well. It was just a great game. And Lombardi always had just a little surprise at the right time. He didn't want to show off his cards, I think, 2 weeks earlier, but he was really upset that we lost that game. And it got under his crawl a little bit because it was a game that we should have won in the Coliseum, and we lost it. And he wasn't about to lose the one in Milwaukee 2 weeks later. And in fact, Roman, I talked to Roman Gabriel, his son, Roman, a little bit, and I just told him the other day, I said, growing up in L.A., my two favorite quarterbacks as a Ram fan back then, was Norman Van Brocklin, and then of course Roman. I always admired Roman, and I'm a Ram fan. In fact, Wade Phillips is a good friend. Of course, I'm pulling for the Rams Sunday, like most people will be. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pulling for the Rams.
I think the Colts got robbed.
Huh?
I think the Colts got robbed.
How did the Colts get robbed?
Yeah.
In Kansas City.
They got Mahomes. Kansas
they got Mahomes.
No.
They got their ass.
They got Mahomes.
Steve is pathetic. He's a Colts fan, which is sad.
Well, Don, what's funny is, like I said,
Baltimore.
I live out here in L.A. It's like the city is so apathetic toward the Rams. I mean, I guess they have a fan base, but you would think that this city would be turning blue and gold left and right. And you watch all the news stations. I mean, they're more worried about the SAG Awards, the Film Foreign Press Awards. They're more worried about Hollywood than they are. Yeah. This is not a great sports town. I mean, UCLA, Steve Alford, who's an IU basketball player, was the coach of this team for 6 years, and I know Steve. We're, in the same fraternity. And I went to practice, went to games, and they couldn't sell out Pauley Pavilion. I went to USC-UCLA game, and they couldn't sell out Pauley Pavilion for that game.
Kidding.
I mean, if you went to an Indiana-Purdue game, you go to West Lafayette last week and see Indiana play Purdue, you can't buy a seat to get in that stadium. Out here, it's just an apathetic sports town. I mean, the Rams, the Chargers are playing in StubHub Field, which is a 35,000-seat soccer stadium, and they can't sell it out.
I know, it's amazing.
Here's the Chargers team, which were one of the 4 best teams, probably 4 or 5 best teams in the NFL this year. They couldn't sell out their games. It's amazing.
I wish the heck they'd go back to San Diego. I really do. I was at the growing up L.A. I was at the first game they ever played at the L.A. Coliseum. I think it was 1960, I believe, 60 or 61, I forget. And then I remember Paul Lowe ran back the opening kickoff for a touchdown. And, Sid Gilman was there. I think Jack Kemp was there. And, all of us. I mean, but I was always a Charger. I mean, I always liked the L.A. Chargers. Of course, I was a Ram fan too. And, but I wish they would, go back to San Diego.
Well, they belong in San Diego.
Yeah, just wait a second now. Hold on, Steve. Because Baltimore, the Colts belong in Baltimore. Am I right, Don?
Yeah. I still call them the Baltimore Colts.
There you go.
I don't know what I'm going to. I never could call them.
That's fair. I get that. Although Don, you have to realize they've been the Indianapolis Colts longer than they've been the Baltimore Colts.
Does not matter.
They've been the Indianapolis Colts for over 36 years now, 35 years. They were only 33 years as the Baltimore Colts.
I never thought
they came from Dallas. That team actually came from Dallas. Was the original Dallas Texans.
This is the thing, though.
Or they had the remnants of the Dallas
Texans. If the Chargers
Texans.
stay in L.A. for the next 51 years from now, you can say they were in L.A. longer than San Diego, but they still are the San Diego Chargers.
Well, the interesting thing about it, Mike, is that the fan base of the Los Angeles Chargers is still San Diego. People just drive up the 405, and they make that 40-mile drive up, and the biggest fan base for the San Diego Chargers, for the Los Angeles Chargers now, is the San Diego people just coming up and rooting for their team up here. They're just going to a different stadium because, the city wouldn't build them a stadium, and the owner held them hostage. And so he said, fine, I'll move. But it's a bad move. I mean, they belong in San Diego. That's where they should be.
I believe Rivers still lives in San Diego. He lives in an area with a good friend of mine.
I'm sure most of them do, because it's only 40 miles.
Yeah,
it takes you 5 hours to drive it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Because
we live on the 405.
Yeah, I talk to Lance Allworth every now and then. I say, hey, Lance, I said this last year, I said, where are we going to have the alumni gathering this year? Are you going to be in San Diego or L.A.? And he says, used. He got that. He starts cussing me out. He said, whatever.
Lance Allworth, the original
these old Chargers. Yeah, these old Chargers, man, they have Dan Faust is the same way, San Diego. I mean, I still have a tough time calling LA Chargers. And
I call San Diego Chargers all the time. Yeah, you can't, I mean, and that's like I think I was watching the golf yesterday. We were talking about Torrey Pines and saying that San Diego's the 8th largest city in the United States. I mean, to not have the Chargers represent San Diego is why the NFL let that happen. Is ridiculous because the Rams aren't selling out the Coliseum. I mean, that place holds 90,000 people. they're not selling it out. Why do you bring another team up here? I mean, and try and compete with that? It doesn't make sense at all. And I don't get it.
Well, it's because of the revenue sharing, I think. You know, they're guaranteed X amount of money whether they play in a 35,000 stadium or a 100,000.
It don't matter if there's anybody at the game. They're making
right.
They made money before the
You're
years
right.
even started.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah,
all right,
but it's the same thing like with the Lakers and the Clippers. You know, to sit on the floor for a Lakers game is $5,000. To sit on the floor for a Clippers game is $500.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just the difference of the two.
I remember this as the San Diego Clippers is what I remember.
Yeah,
they started out in San Diego. You know, and speaking of that, you know, the L.A. Rams started out in Cleveland. They were the Cleveland Rams at one time.
Cleveland Rams, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Interesting.
All right, so I got to hear your best Max McGee story because he's a legend.
Max McGee was Super Bowl one.
Yeah, my rookie year was both Max and Fuzzy's last year, and it was a privilege to play with those guys. Max was a character.
But you had to have heard the stories. I mean, he's legendary in terms of drinking until 7:45, coming to team meetings, and then and having the greatest game of his career in life. You got to have a great Max McGee story.
I think he should have been co-MVP with Bart that Super Bowl one.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it because I was right there sitting in that end zone. He made that one-handed boom catch, you know, and to hear stories about it, you know. In fact, we just had a reunion this year back in Green Bay, and they were talking about it. Dollar and these guys, you know, Dollar hurt his shoulder against the Cowboys, and then he went out in that first series. I think he injured his shoulder again, and then Max had been there, and and they say Max, when Coach Lombardi started yelling McGee. He kind of, he couldn't find his helmet. And the first series, he wore somebody else's helmet. The first series he went in the game. He actually caught a pass, I think, too, wearing somebody else's helmet. Couldn't find his helmet. And then he came off the field and he finally found his helmet. That's how prepared he was. So, but next year, we started, you hear the stories about Vince, and so we're in that same meeting when Vince says, gentlemen, there's 3 reasons why you're in here, et cetera, et cetera. So then we start, maybe it's before that or right after that, but he starts talking about, what we're going to do this year. And then he said, no, coach, hey, hang on. No, coach, nope, stop. You know what you got to do. And then Lombardi looked at him. And then Max and Fuzzy and these guys are saying, Coach, you know what to do. You got to do it. And then the coach, he turned around, picked up a football, turned around to the team and said, gentlemen, this is a football. And that's how he started. That's how basic he started. But every year, I guess he started that. But during the season, I found out my rookie year, he would just, you watch game film. You'd watch game film the week prior to it, and Vince would start running that film back and forth. And most of the time, he'd call people by their numbers, I remember one time he said, 64. Who's 64? Coach, Kramer, Jerry said, is that you, Jerry? And he's watching Jerry, and he said, Jerry missed a block. And he says, well, he ran it back 3 or 4 times. And he said, Jerry, so help me, I've seen stray dogs wander on the practice field that are better guards than you'll ever be. I'm going, holy smokes, he's talking to him like this guy's all pro. He's talking. And then, and Bart would make a mistake or something like that. He'd say, Bart, 15, Bart, better than that. I might as well let the young boy Donald Horn. Just stuff. So one day I get in the game, and I first pass I ever threw, I think it was the Atlanta Falcons, about halfway through the season. And I threw a pass over the middle. It was a little turn in, about a 15-yard turn in, went right through Max's hands. And we're watching the game film. We won the game. But we're watching the game film, and Vince starts running this thing back. And I'm going, oh my gosh, did I make the right read? Is it a 5-step drop, 7-step drop? Did I do that? Whatever. And I'm sweating bullets. He runs it back 4 or 5 times, and he says, 85. Matt, Coach says, Coach, that's me. Max, he said, he ran it back, and he says, Max, look at that. That's pathetic. I told you before the season you're too old to play this game. Look at that. That young boy, Donald, put that ball right there in your hands, and you dropped it. You're too old to play the game. You should have quit. He's joking around. Max says, frankly, Coach, I was taken off guard. I was taken by surprise. And he says, what do you mean by taken by surprise? He says, well, that's the best ball I've seen thrown around here in 4.5 years. I'm not used to a ball being thrown that well. And the whole place just busted up, Just that's the way Max was, It's just Max. He always had the one-liners for Coach Lombardi. Fuzzy was the same way. In that same game, by then, he put, Max really wasn't starting that much, and he was kind of over the hill and stuff. And we get in that game, and I want to prove to Vince that I can move the ball and stuff. And Fuzzy was my left guard. Max was in there, and a couple of guys, and then I'd go to the line of scrimmage, and we're supposed to go in a 3-point stance right away, and then Fuzzy would stand up in a 2-point stance. I'd be behind the center, and Fuzzy's my left guard, and Fuzzy would stand up, look around. He'd look around at the front four, the front three, or whatever. He'd say, "Okay, let it go." And so whatever play I had called, I let it go. Every now and then he'd say, get out of it, check it. So then I would check to something else. I said that first game I ever played, really didn't leave the time. Fuzzy called most of my audibles. So he's just a good, and then pretty soon Max would say, in the same game, of course, we're winning, but this happened a couple of times, and finally Max says, "Don't listen to anybody in this huddle." And he pointed to Fuzzy, especially that guy right there. He said, "Don't listen to Fuzzy." He says, he says, "You're the man, and you're the quarterback. You tell us what to do. We don't tell you what to do." I said, "Yeah, okay." He's telling me this. And then I get in the huddle, and Max says, "Oh, by the way, I'm open at a square out 15 yards. I would thank you. But Max was he's just like that. He'd like to pull people's chains and stuff. He was just a great guy, just a great man. I really loved him. And then I got, he'd come back all, during the next 2 or 3 years I was there. Max would come in all the time. He was doing some broadcasting and stuff, but he was just a great guy. It was a great bunch of guys. I just talked to Robbie the other day. I talked to Jerry Kramer all the time. There were so many great ball players on that team, both, character-wise too, just people of good character. Willie Wood, Herb Adderley, Robbie, we lost Nitschke and stuff. I remember one time Nitschke says, "Don," he says, "I can help you. Bart and Zeke can only help you so much, But he says, I play against the best every week. I play Unitas and Brody and Jurgensen and these guys." He says, and he was a great help. He says, I'll try to teach you what I watch out for and what it's difficult for me to read and that kind of thing from a middle linebacker's perspective. So, I started doing that. I started going and sitting in some of the defensive meetings and stuff. I remember one day I went there and Phil Bankston's telling me, they're watching defensive game, and they're watching Fran Tarkington, I think, and I think he was with the Vikings or maybe the Giants. I don't know what it was. But he says, "Raymond," he says, "look at that." He says, every time Fran gets up into the center, anytime he's got both feet together, he said, it's going to be a pass. If he has one foot up and the other one back, the right foot up, it's going to be a run, or the other way around. He says, if they're off a little bit, he says it's going to be a run. And he says, if they're together, it's going to be a pass. He says, that works like 6 out of 7 times or whatever. He said, look at that. That's a good key. That's a good key, Ray. You got to look at that. And Ray says, "Coach," he says, "look," he says, "I don't have time to sit there and say, Fran, wait a minute. Let me check your feet. Hang on. Okay. Look, let me, I don't have time to do all that stuff." He says, "I got, I'm barking out signals and stuff. I don't have time to read that stuff." So,
All right.
Yeah, you made two great comments that I want. First off, the film sessions, and when I played in Indiana, 77 to 81, we still had the 8mm film. We didn't have the videotaping capabilities that they all do now. Like you got out there, and it's like the coach would just hit the button and rewind the play, and we came up with the term an NFW pass or an NFW play. And you know what? No effing way. Man, and Knight would say that's an NFW pass, and it would just get played over and over and over and over again. But you'd have to go up and you'd have to say, "Risley, get up there and point where you should be." And you go point and go, "Sit down. You don't know where the hell you should be." And the whole session of the film is probably the same thing with Lombardi with you guys as it was with Knight with us. They would toy with you in those film rooms. They'd have so much fun with you, and you're like you all started rolling your eyes as players. You're like, oh God, okay, well it's Risley's turn to get, and everybody would feel for you because it's like, oh, he's going to get called out today. Next day it's going to be Whitman, or it's going to be Tolbert, or it's going to be Fuzzy Thurston, or it's going to be Jim Taylor or somebody. Somebody's going to get called out. He's going to get picked on that day. But again, you go back to the story of the day he stopped picking on you was the day you better worry, because that's the day he quit.
True.
The other thing that I thought you made a great point was that what we saw in our championship runs and our teams was the camaraderie in the locker room. And I think that's what people don't understand was, and I sensed that from the Packers of that era. They all defended each other. They protected each other. You guys all stayed as a tight-knit group of people. And we did that with our basketball team that won in 81. Everybody loved everybody, and we all had quirky personalities. We all were different, and we would rib each other and never take it personally and just have a lot of fun with it. And I think that's the hidden chemistry of championship football teams that people that don't ever get in the locker room don't ever see.
That's a good point, Steve. And Coach Lombardi always encouraged us to socialize. Not only on the field, off the field, because he felt that if you socialize, got to know each other, and break bread, have a little glass of wine or a beer every now and then with your teammates. Come Sunday afternoon when things get tough, man. I mean, you look each other in the eye, and you just have
Knight forced it. Knight forced it. He didn't want to be your friend. He didn't. I'm sure Lombardi was the same way. Lombardi didn't want to be your friend. He wanted to be your coach, and he wanted you to be friends, and he wanted you to gang up on him. I always found that with Knight, the people that Knight respected the most were the people that would stand up to him and call him out, and say, "I'm not afraid of you." And I'm sure Lombardi was the same way, where you went up to him and said, if Max McGee went up to him and said, "I don't care what you say. I'm a great receiver. I'll catch the ball. Don't worry about it. Just throw it to me." And I think that Lombardi probably respected that and used McGee as kind of a tool to motivate other people, but he had so much respect for Max McGee that it didn't matter, because that's how Knight was in our locker room. He didn't want to be your friend. He didn't want you to like him.
Yeah,
he knew the minute he did that, you've lost control of the team if you want to be their buddies.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he did not want you to be, at least a close friend or maybe an acquaintance with him, but not a friend or not a bosom buddy friend. And and probably the closest ones ever were Max and Paul. They probably got the closest to him. Bart did too to a point, but those guys, Vince still treated him, like everybody else. He would still rip into him. But that's so true. That's a good point. Good point.
So, Mike, can I ask one more question? Then I'll shut up, because I could do this all day. I could talk to Don all day.
Don, every show there's a point where Steve says, "Can I ask just one more question?" And I'm going to shut up. He never.
I know. I'm giddy. This is the most fun interview
Steve.
I've ever had the privilege of doing. Are you kidding me? Because I understand what Don's saying. I get his coaching, what's happening. I get how he got it, because it's what I lived.
Hey, Steve.
So I'm in hog heaven right now.
Before you forget what that question is, you better get to it.
No, my question is, describe Super Bowl II. I mean, we know Super Bowl now is this grandiose, panoramic epic of music and festival.
Wait a second. What word is grandiose?
Over the top, big,
you
large.
You mean grandiose?
Grandiose, yeah. Well, you say tomato, I say tomato. Yeah. Whatever.
Well, you say it wrong and I say it right. Go ahead.
Go to Super Bowl II. Was it that big of an event there? Because, I've heard stories Lombardi say, it's another football game. We're playing against an inferior team. We should kill them.
He treated it like another football game. But as far as we're concerned, hang on, I got that. Yeah, okay. But, that he was worried. He won the first one. And there was a lot of pressure on him. NFL team could not lose against AFL team. That was the pressure, or whatever. And it was a big game in that sense. And Vince wanted us to approach it like it was just another game. He didn't want us to get, overconfident or whatever. So what he would do during that week, we only had, I guess we had like a week. Yeah, we had 2 weeks. Yeah, we had 2 weeks to prepare for that. And but he would say, gentlemen, the press is going to approach you, and all I want you to say, or just kind of be, just kind of say something in general like, Oakland's a very good football team. They're respected and they represent the AFL. They're a good champion, represent the AFL football and that kind of stuff. Don't say anything more or whatever. Don't say we're going to kick their fanny. We're not going to guarantee anything and that kind of stuff. But I know during our meetings that we had that week, we were down in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. We'd watch game film of their defense, and he'd sit there. We were watching game film, and he'd start laughing. He'd say, "Look at that." He'd say, "Look at that." He says, "Bart, look at that. They're doing things that are obsolete in the NFL 10, 15 years ago, and they're getting away with it." And through that whole week of preparation of watching game film, he would instill in us that no matter what they did, as good as they are, and they were a good football team, damn good football team, no matter what they did, it was nothing that we hadn't faced before, or, the Packers hadn't faced before, and not only before, but years ago. So there was nothing new that they couldn't throw at us that we couldn't handle, and he just kept conveying that. They're a good football team, but they're not doing anything that's unique or different than teams that we haven't beaten, over the years that tried the same stuff, and then they get into detail of why we would win, why they can't beat us, and break it down that way. And come game time, we were very confident that we were going to win, and it just turned out that way. That's the way Vince was, and then. When they carried him off the field, I didn't really realize that was the last game he was going to coach as the head coach of the Packers. So, it was a great thrill to be there. I know 2 weeks earlier in that Ice Bowl game, that last drive that Bart put together, we're sitting on the sidelines going, well, it was a good run, but, we haven't moved the ball in 30 or 40 minutes. We haven't gained 17, 20 yards in 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden Bart puts that drive together against the Cowboys, and boom, snuck it over, and we won that game, and that kind of gave us the momentum that no one could stop us after that.
Now, let me ask you this. We compare this to this Super Bowl and the New England Patriots. The reason I do that is when you look at the Patriots, when they played the Chargers, when they played the Chiefs, they're going to play the Rams, those teams look more talented. Do you think there's any similarity there with what Belichick can do with what he's got? Because that Packers team, I don't think you guys had a running back that ran for more than 450 yards. But your advantage was Lombardi, I think. And I think this Patriots team is kind of similar.
Yeah, we had Lombardi, and Phil Bankson was a great defensive coordinator. He was pretty good too, but that's true. It's a similar type of a situation. Belichick and Josh, they always have something up their sleeve, and they've been there so much that they've seen everything people can throw at them. And but then I'm pulling for the Rams. Wade's a good friend and defensive coordinator, and I think they got some surprises they're going to throw at him too. If they can get to Brady, if they can get Brady, flush him out of that doggone pocket, if they can get him out of that pocket, they got a chance. If they can't, if they give him any kind of play action pass and stuff and let him sit in that pocket and just pick things apart, it's going to be a long afternoon for the Rams. But if they can put any kind of rush on him, which I'm not sure they can, I hope they can, but it could be another.
Well, with Sue and Donald, if there's anybody that can put pressure up the middle without blitzing on him, it would be that team.
Yeah, I hope so. But I hadn't seen that much in the last two games they played. They hadn't only got to the QB that much, and I was hoping they would. Maybe they will this time. I don't know, but that's why these coaches get paid. The millions of dollars that they get is to come up with game plans to pull that off, and I sure hope the Rams do. Sure hope the Rams.
Don, I got a question for you. Can you just kind of go through? I don't know if you don't want to. I get it, but the similarities and differences between Belichick and Lombardi, because those are often now talked about as the two greatest coaches ever to coach professional football. And there's camps for Lombardi, the old school, and there's camps for Belichick with the high science and the schemes and everything like that. how do you, as a guy who played for Lombardi and watched Belichick coach, how do you see them stacking up against each other?
Well, I mean, I'm prejudiced. To me, there's nobody better than Vince. No one ever will be. And Belichick has done. I give him credit. I always tell people, a lot of people hate the Patriots, and I say you got to give credit where credit's due, and you got to be like Lombardi. You got to reward the winner, and give them their accolades, and they deserve it. But to coach a team for years that had Brady and stuff. Tom Brady. That's an asset too. Now, granted, he's gone through a lot of players, and he's had great results with teams that with not necessarily the best players, and so I give him credit for there. But you go back when he was at Cleveland, he didn't do anything.
Now wait a second, Don. In 1991, when he took over, they were coming off being a 3-win team. By 94. They had made the playoffs. They'd won a game. And in 1995, they were one of the favorites to win the AFC. They were sitting in first place in Week 8. And then Modell announced that the team was moving, and everything fell apart from there. So I don't think – I think that if Modell doesn't move them and lets him go, I mean, you got to remember, Nick Saban was his defensive coordinator. So I think it's pushing to say he didn't do anything, because the Cleveland Browns have not won a playoff game since him.
That's true. I'm just they haven't done anything compared to what his success was in New England. I guess I should clarify that.
Yeah, but outside of Lombardi's Packers, Chuck Noll's Steelers, I don't think anybody ever has.
Yeah. Well, I'm with the year that Vince went down in '69 to Washington. Max came back, and Paul. They came back to Green Bay. We're having a few beers at Fuzzy's place right after training camp, and right before the season started, 1969. And I remember Max got up and he says, guys, if Coach Lombardi wins more than 2 games with that bunch of misfits down in D.C., he's a better coach than we ever thought he was up here in Green Bay. That year, he went 7-5-2, the first winning record that they've had in like 12 or 15 years or 13 years or something. And, and he turned that team around in 1 year.
Yeah, and I think if he doesn't get sick and he stays there, maybe Don Shula is not the legend he is, if you know what I mean. Maybe the Washington Redskins dominate that, because I know
that could be, because George Allen came in and he kind of Vince set the he kind of set the basics for us, for it or whatever, and then he passed away, and then George comes in and picks up the pieces and puts it together, and then has a winning, has a few good years with the Redskins, but all that was set up by Vince, I think. So anyway, that's
I think
a good
the
point.
Comparison would be easier to make if Vince would have had 8 or 9 years in Washington to see what would have happened. The thing that stands out to me is this with him. I'm one that thinks maybe Paul Brown did more than anybody for professional football. But when I look at it, the thing that stands out with me with Belichick is the fact that he's had to overturn a third of his roster every year, and for 18 years keeps winning.
Yeah.
So I think there's things you can say about one that you can't say about the other. But I think in the end, I think there's no doubt when you throw guys like that. I would also put Paul Brown, Tom Landry, those guys belong in that conversation also. But when you talk coaching football, you talk about Belichick and Lombardi. It's hard to compare eras, just like it's hard to compare Bart Starr to Tom Brady, because the game is completely different from when the two played.
That's so true. It's a different game today, totally different than it was years ago and whatever. Keep in mind, though, that Bart won 5 championships, in a relatively short period of time. Vince won, he won 5 championships, the first 2 Super Bowls.
He also did it with less competition and no parity, because the NFL is designed for parity now, which back then you could kind of keep your players. But I don't think it's an argument, because me and Steve have had the argument before, and I don't think it matters who you have, number one. It's like, to me, the 2 best quarterbacks I've ever saw were Brady and Montana. And if somebody wants to tell me Montana's better than Brady, I'm not going to argue that, because as a Bengals fan, I've seen that greatness close up.
I can't argue that too much. I can't argue that at all. Yeah, but Brady, Brady's just head and shoulders. I mean, you got to give it credit's due. I kept telling these, I read to so many people that hate New England, And I'm going, you got to reward the winner. God, the things they've accomplished, man, you got to give them credit. Come on,
But here's the question.
Right.
Here's the question, Don. Here's the question. Would Brady be Brady without Belichick?
Yeah, that's the thing. And
how about this? Would Bart Starr be Bart Starr without Vince Lombardi?
Bart Starr without Lombardi. Right. No, that's do great coaches make great quarterbacks? Is that a better predictor?
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. Well, you Walsh and Joe Montana, you go right there too. The West Coast offense and what Montana did with it. I mean, you look at all the truly what we call the elite quarterbacks, Starr, Brady. I can't put Dungy and Manning in there because, well, I just won't put that duo together. But you look at the other three and you say it's a great coach made a great quarterback because of the schemes and the offense and how they use their talent.
Dan Fouts says today the only reason he's in the Hall of Fame is because of Don Coryell. I know. When I retired a couple years later, Coryell gets announced he's the head coach of the Chargers, I think, in I forget, mid-'70s or something. So I get a hold of Dan. I said, "Get ready, you're going to be reborn." He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Coryell's coming to town. You'll find out." And the only reason he's in the Hall of Fame, he said, is because of Don Coryell. He couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and if you look at Don Coryell, that's a guy that took the Cardinals and made Jim Hart an all-pro quarterback in the mid-'70s and got him to the playoffs a couple times, and the Cardinals hadn't been in the playoffs in years. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, he was a passing. He just loved to throw that ball. I loved him. In fact, I remember, Coryell always talked with a lisp, he had a little lisp and stuff, and we always called him the Daffy Duck. And at his memorial service a few years ago, Dan gets up and he says, "I'm fortunate." He said, "I played with Coryell for like 8 or 9 years, at Sipe and Horn and Dennis Shaw. They only played with him, 2 or 3 years or whatever." He said, "I was fortunate. I played 9 years." But he says the first time, one of the first games he ever played when Coryell came there, it might have been a preseason game or something. He said, Fouts goes out, he throws 2 picks in the first quarter, and he's like 3 out of 11 with 2 picks, total of maybe 20 yards. He has had a hell of a terrible game. He comes to the bench, sits on the sidelines, gets his dauber down, kind of sits by himself. All of a sudden, he sees Coryell walking towards him, and he says, he thinks he's going to get his butt chewed out by Coryell. Coryell walks up to him and says, Dan, what's wrong, son?" And Dan says, paraphrase, "Coach, I don't know. I just not clicking on all cylinders. I don't know what's wrong today. I can't do anything. I can't do anything right or whatever. A couple of picks or whatever." And Coryell goes, Oh, Dan, don't worry about that. You got 40 more passes to throw. Get back out there. Don't worry about that. You got 40 more to throw." And he says, "No one ever talked to me like that." He says, "You're right. I got 40 more passes to throw here before the eve is over with, so I'm going to do it." So, but that's the way Coryell was. Always look at the positive, not the negative.
All right, Steve, you got anything else for Don before we let him go?
Oh man, I could talk all day. I mean, I'm enjoying
Steve literally
this so much,
can
but
talk all day, Don. Don't doubt that.
You know what? Because I'm a sponge. Because I listen to somebody of this kind of genius, unlike you, Mike.
Whatever, Steve.
This kind of genius, this kind of history, and you just want to just keep absorbing anything you hear because it's the golden era of sports, and it's when, like Lombardi said, there are those of you who will play. A few of you want to come here and play for money, but there are still most of you that want to play because you love the game. And I think that was an era when these players played because they just loved the game. Most of them, if I'm not mistaken, Don, had sold insurance or worked somewhere else in the off season.
Well,
did other jobs.
As Jim Taylor used to say, they'd say, "What's the difference of the game today?" Back in the '60s or whatever. And he says, "Well, back then, most all of us, you're right. We had to have an off-season job. We had an off-season job or two. Number one,
people don't realize that.
And then number two, we didn't run out of bounds like they do today.
Yeah, they took hits.
These guys are always running out of bounds. And back in the old days, the only time you ran out of bounds is if you're trying to save a timeout or don't have any timeouts. Most of the time, Vince will get mad at you because you didn't manage the clock right. So you never ran out of bounds unless you got knocked out of bounds. So,
and I don't know did Bart Starr ever wear anything but a single bar face mask?
I think he went to a double bar. I know the first year.
Eventually, he went to double bar. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. The first year I went to a single bar and I got my nose broken against the Bears and stuff or whatever, and got torn up pretty good. And then the next year I went to a double bar for a few years and I ended up going to a face mask.
All right. Well,
yeah,
Don?
only McGee. Every picture I can remember McGee, he was in a single bar.
Yeah, he's single bar. Yep.
Yeah.
That, you know,
guys, they took the hits.
Yeah.
You know, and they didn't complain, and you know, they got hurt, and they got up and played. They taped it up and went back and played again.
Yeah.
And now, you know, guy runs 3 running plays. He's over on the sidelines, you know, sitting down at $25 million a year, getting oxygen. Like, are you kidding me? Get your ass back in the game, you idiot.
You know, a receiver goes downfield, or a running back runs 10 or 15 yards, and he gets up and he starts waving the sidelines. You know, get somebody in for me, and he pulls himself out. I mean, God, I can't believe. You know, I mean, the kind of money these guys make more money. Some of them make more money in one quarter of one game than I made in 9 years. I mean, that's how pathetic it is. I mean, that's how out of kilter it is.
Yeah, but we still had a very exciting football game yesterday in the Pro Bowl, Don.
Oh my God! Why do they even do that?
Touch ball. Yeah, they should.
Well,
just,
my fear
need to
is
stop
10
that.
years from now, that's what a regular NFL game might look like.
You know, I'm afraid that, you know, hopefully that's not the case, but they're still, it's moving in that direction, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know.
But all right,
really
we've kept you for over an hour, Don, but it didn't seem that long.
No, it did not. It seemed like 5 minutes.
Yeah. But
well, listen.
Yeah.
I enjoyed talking to you and Mike and Steve. I really enjoyed it, guys.
Well, you mostly enjoyed talking to me. Mike, you got to kind of tolerate. That's okay.
Whatever.
We'll let that go, Don. We told stories about our great coaches and things back and forth, and shared experiences, and realized that the great coaches, you know, manifest themselves in a way that they win championships. And there's a reason why great coaches win championships.
Yeah.
Mike, he kind of contributed some base stuff. I'm a Bobby Knight fan too. Yeah, I've been a Bobby Knight fan too. So, and I've always been a Vince Lombardi fan. I mean, it's you know, so it's great.
Yep.
All right, guys, we are going to let Don go. Don, thank you for coming on. Love to have you on again sometime.
Anytime, guys. Let me know, and go Rams. Go
Rams.
All
right. Next up, guys, we will have Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan line to talk a little bit of the Super Bowl line, update us on where it's at.
Sheridan Report.
Sheridan Report, whatever. About time I screwed something up.
See Don?
Don's gone. So we want to thank Don Horn again from the Green Bay Packers. So right now we're going to hear a commercial for a minute, and we will be right back with Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan Report.
Hello, boxing fans. I'm Michael Montero of Montero on Boxing. You may have read my work in Boxing Monthly Magazine, Ring Magazine, or their associated websites, maybe Undisputed Champion Network, maybe you've heard my segments on NBC Sports Radio, or any of the other platforms where I do work regularly. I wanted to invite you to check out my podcast, The Neutral Corner. We upload it every Monday. It's available on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, and of course at thegruelingtruth.net. Every week we go over the news, the rumors, the latest fights being put together. We analyze everything, give you the business behind the business, and then we review all the action that took place in the ring during the prior week around the world. Not just the big popular fights, but all the fights, including the little guys. And then, of course, we preview the action coming up this week. Again, Michael Montero, The Neutral Corner, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, and thegruelingtruth.net.
All right, guys, we're back on Survive in Advance. Once again, we want to thank former Green Bay Packer quarterback Don Horn for coming on, sharing his Vince Lombardi, his Super Bowl II experiences. Of course, I'm Mike Goodpaster here with Steve Risley. And right now, as always, at the end of our show, we're bringing on Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan Report. How you doing, Bobby?
Mike, I'm doing great this morning. How are you and Steve doing?
We are doing great. Steve, we just had a great interview where Steve didn't screw it up this time.
Best one I've ever done. I mean, I have never had more fun than talking to Don Horn. I mean, just what a learning experience.
Hey, Bobby, do you remember last week when Steve was bitching because I had Sam Weiss on a Legends show, and I said, but I got you Don Horn, and now see how this turned out, Bobby.
Hey, anything you touch turns into gold, Mike Goodpaster.
Yeah. Oh, piss off. Jesus Christ. Sheridan. What the hell? That's the last time I plug your sorry-ass website.
He's talking about you too, Risley. Now Risley's relevant again.
Your name.
Huh?
You go back and listen to the interview and see who handled most of the good questions.
I am very much looking forward to that interview.
The point
was that's great.
The point was to let you ask most of the questions because I already did an hour and a half with him on a Legends show about 2 years ago. So I was doing that as reward for you. And then
thank
this
you.
is the way
thank you very much for rewarding me because it was the greatest reward you've given me in the time we've been together. Ooh. I had fun.
Well, happy anniversary, Steve.
You know,
all right, it's Bobby.
Today's interview was an instant classic then. Instant classic.
It is an instant classic.
That's great.
All right, so where is the updated Super Bowl line falling right now, Bobby?
Well, the theme is still waiting on the Rams money, and it's going to come, and it's going to come in hard, but it hasn't hit yet. New England is still 2.5, and 9 of the 12 properties up here, and the total is 56.5 or 57. That's split. 67% of the tickets are on New England, so that's come down a bit, and 89% of the money, so that's come down a bit. It's going to be a lot more here. Probably when we report in the next few days.
So if I want to bet on the Patriots, I should probably wait till Saturday or Sunday.
Well, I don't. Maybe a lot of people are. It goes to 2. It pops back to 2.5. It started around pick'em. So the Patriots' money is just you want to get in under a field goal, and you can get that now.
You want to bet now? Yeah.
That's what I was thinking because see the line at 3 places is at 3 already. So, that he's not entirely wrong. That Rams money is going to come in. So I think what's happened is they're anticipating the Rams money. So these 9 places that haven't gone to 3 are just going to hold firm and say, okay, Rams money's just going to have to come in at 2.5. They're not going to get them at 3. So the Rams money's coming in. And they're holding firm on it, so I would think that, that line could go down once the Rams' money does come in. It may not touch 3 at every place. It's very interesting.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's only going to get worse for the Patriots, right? Because the spread's only going to get bigger. It's going to favor more the Rams, right? As the spread grows. Well, if it goes to 3, that favors the Rams.
The Patriots are favored, though, so if more money comes in on
the
Rams...
Right, by 2.5 right now, so...
Yeah. But if more money comes in on the Rams, it may end up being even or 1 or 1.5.
Right, it can come down a smidge, and it's just a question of whether the property wants to hold firm, knowing the Rams money's coming in, and not go to 3, or have to finally go to 3, and we'll see what happens. We'll see when the big bets come out, and I
now,
think.
Am I right to say? I don't know this for sure, but if we don't have any Rams money by Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, do they then maybe raise it to 3 to try to get more money on the Rams?
Well, then that's when it's a waiting game. That's when they'll say, okay, we're going to have to go to 3, and then that's when the big money comes in. So, there's no reason to bet now if you're on the Rams unless you find one of the 3s. It's 9 of the 12 properties are at 2.5. There's already 3 properties that have gone. Because, they want the money now. They just want to see where they're at now, and it's probably the smaller of the properties,
Bobby, will it go to 3.5? Will we get a 2-score spread?
No.
It will not go to 3.5.
3.5. No.
Because that makes it a 2-score or a touchdown or a 2-score, right? It takes field goal out of play.
Right, it makes it 2-score, right? So, it won't go to 3.5.
Or it takes field goal out of play.
Right, it takes that field goal would be a winning for the Rams, and I think the best you're going to get is a 3 on the Rams.
All right, Bobby, what's a middling strategy for a sports gambler?
Okay, well, middling, when you middle the game, when you try to hit a middle, when you have an opportunity to, for instance, yesterday was a great example. I was on Minnesota in college basketball. They were playing Iowa, and the game was a pick'em. I got Minnesota +1, and I got more at pick'em. And Minnesota had an 11, it was either 9 or 11. I think it was 11, might have been 9, point lead at halftime. Okay? It was 9. Yeah, it was 9. And so it was one of those games where I'm happy with my lead. The team I bet on is winning. But, these games will flip sometimes. And, there are opportunities to middle a game. And what I mean by that is there's a halftime line that comes out on all these games. So yesterday, Iowa comes out, and I'm on it. I'm aware of it, and it comes out. Iowa's -3 just for the second half. Just second half scoring, Iowa's -3, and I felt like, well, here's a pretty good opportunity. This is a game, last year when they played at Minnesota, there was a big deficit of 16, and they almost came back and nailed them. And I thought, that could happen again, and I want to maybe insure a little bit of my bet and maybe get lucky and hit. And so what I mean by that is Iowa -3, I took that for 25% of what my bet was on Minnesota. So I took 25% of that money. Like, let's say I put 1,000 on Minnesota, I put 250 on Iowa -3, and it wound up middling. Middling meaning Iowa won the second half by 5 or 6, and it was a 4 or 5 point margin, the final score. So you hit your original bet and you hit your middle bet. And what it does is it gives you an opportunity to increase your win and or decrease your loss. If Iowa comes back and wins the game straight up, then I've gotten 25% of my money back. And so there's situations when the team you bet greatly outperforms expectations by the halftime. Like, let's say you have a team you bet that's an underdog and they're winning the game straight up at half. That's another really good opportunity to come back, pick the opposite side, and middle. So middling is how you do that, and it's a good betting strategy.
So tonight we got the Golden State Warriors and the Indiana Pacers. I know you wanted to analyze that matchup a little bit.
Yeah, we've got 3 games on the TSR report, and that's one of them. That's the one we're going to talk about, and I'm going to give you all 3 on the air for your listeners right now. We went 4-0 yesterday. We're really happy with that, and we had a really good week. And I want to go ahead and give out all 3 selections today. And Golden State is down to -8 over the Pacers. That's a top play for us. And then Memphis is up to +6 over the Nuggets. That's a play. And then another top play being college, Texas Tech is now up to -5. They were 4.5 on the sheet, but morning they're -5. So that's our 3 plays: Golden State, Memphis, and Texas Tech. With Golden State and Texas Tech, the top plays. If I can speak a moment on the Golden State game, I think in handicapping, too often public, non-professional bettors will get a read on a team, and then they'll hang on that read for the next year. Well, Golden State doesn't cover as a favorite. So-and-so can't win when they're on the road, and then they hold on to that. Well, things change. Landscapes change. And Golden State's a really good example of that. They now have put things together, and especially on the defensive end, they're playing much better. And all of a sudden, the team that couldn't win and cover spreads, they're winning and covering spreads. And tonight, they go into Indiana. They end a 5-game, 11-day trip. They've outscored their opponents in the first 4 games comfortably, and they've won all the hustle awards. And you look at defense, the offensive rebounds, the turnovers that they've created, the steals, deflections, those type of stats. They're now winning, and they weren't winning those before. And it's pretty obvious in basketball, when you win those, you're going to be pretty good. And I think they're going to want to win tonight and finish off this road trip. They come off of a very good game against Boston, where they were challenged and defeated Boston the other day. Won all those categories we talked about. Had a nice one on the road. Boston had won, I believe, 10 straight at home. Can't remember the exact stats on them, but they were on a nice streak as well. And Golden State ended that, and they get an opportunity to get some revenge tonight on Indiana. The Pacers, I didn't realize this until I started looking at this game, beat them both times last year. One of them, there were a number of injuries to Golden State, but one of them, Golden State was pretty much at full strength, and so I think Golden State's going to want to beat Indiana tonight. And then you look at Indiana, everybody knows about the Oladipo stuff and all that, but I watched the Memphis game pretty closely the other day, and Evans in the starting lineup, he had scored double figures in 7 straight games, and he got in the starting lineup and didn't find the shots. He only had 7 shots. He had 9 points, but you play different combinations when you're starting already, and all of a sudden, and you're around, there's different options, and he only got 7 shots up in 29 minutes. And then there are 3 bench guys that came in and kind of took a lot of his minutes. Holiday, Joseph, and McDermott was 7 for 22. So I just don't think they're going to be able to score enough tonight, and it's a tough spot for them. And then they go on the road after this and play 4 games in 6 days on the road. So life's hard sometimes, and they're going to have to just try to get through this. But tonight's going to be a tough spot for them, and even getting 8 points, I see this as a double-digit win for Golden State, and I think they're going to want to consolidate that victory in this road trip with another win.
All right.
So we got Golden State -8.
All right. I almost hope you're wrong since I'm a Pacers fan, but you probably won't be on this one. I just don't see how they can do it with Oladipo. With Oladipo, they had a hard time with this one. What's your on this day, Bobby?
On this day is kind of a lead-in to LeVon Kirkland, who you're going to have on the show
Thursday
this week. And
yeah.
On Thursday. Wow, that's really interested in that one. I knew of him, I heard of him, of course, but when I went back and on this day came up, I looked at that. What a player he was, and this was the anniversary date of his Super Bowl when they lost to Dallas, and I know you guys will get into that big time, and that's not what I'm here to do, but he had 10 tackles and a sack in this game. They lost 27-17, but I just really thought that was pretty neat, and what a good guest you guys are going to have coming up on Thursday. And today's the anniversary of that Super Bowl.
Yeah, and the thing that was interesting about that 10 tackles is coming into that game, I think the Cowboys were a touchdown favorite, but I'm not sure. But the thing that stood out to me was you had Emmitt Smith for the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys were held to 56 yards rushing for the entire game. The Steeler defense actually held them to like 270 yards. The defense was those interceptions by Larry Brown in the fourth quarter when the game was still up in the air. It still hung in the balance. But they held Emmitt Smith, if I remember, to I think it was 25 carries for 55 yards, which is unheard of against Emmitt Smith. And the other thing is this. Everybody remembers the onside kick Peyton did against the Colts in Super Bowl 44. But this was the Super Bowl where Bill Cowher did the same thing, only it was a little later in the game, where he onside kicked, got it back, and actually they go down and scored and had the game within 3 points in the fourth quarter. So Cowher made a great call there, but Neil O'Donnell throws the 2 picks, which from talking to guys that played on that team, I know at least one of those picks was not his fault, and the other one was debatable, so I think O'Donnell gets a bad rap there. But that was a Steelers team that I think halfway through the season, they were stuck. I think they were 5-4, and they went to Cincinnati. The Bengals were, I think, 3-6 or 4-5, and the Bengals were up 31-13 on them at halftime. And the Steelers came back and beat the Bengals 49-31 and didn't lose another game until they got to that Super Bowl. But that was the Larry Brown Super Bowl. He made a lot of money off of that. I forget where he went after that, but he was never anything more than a journeyman who just got lucky to be in the right place at the right time. But yeah, LeVon Kirkland is one of the top 3 to 5 linebackers the entire decade of the 90s. It gets overlooked, I think, a lot because of his size. I mean, you were looking at a linebacker that weighed 300 pounds, but he was great in coverage. And he was the guy that was covering Emmitt Smith out of the backfield in that game. So I can't wait to have him on. But that also is an underrated Super Bowl. It was a really good game, Bobby.
Wow, yeah, and hearing some of that stuff, it's amazing. Pittsburgh, that just goes to show you how good Dallas was. Because if Pittsburgh could hold him to 55 yards and recover the onside and do some good things,
yeah,
how do you not win? They did everything they could to win.
Yeah, Aikman only had a little over 200 yards passing. And they still won the game and ended up with 30 points because defensively they won the game, which is what made that a legendary team. It was also coached by Barry Switzer, which keeps it from being as legendary as the teams a couple years before. But yeah,
very very interesting. That'll be cool.
But you got anything else, Steve?
Me?
Yeah, you're Steve, by the way. Steve.
No, okay. Shut up.
Steve's all talked out from interviewing Don Horn about himself.
Yeah, I'm going to be hard for me to get over talking to Don.
You know
Sorry,
what, Steve? I can't
age,
wait to hear that.
It was a phenomenal opportunity to. You don't get this opportunity to do that very often, to speak to somebody that lived that life and played for that coach and played on that team. It was to me, it was an incredible opportunity. Almost like a day when I don't have to do a show with Goodpaster.
If you
just another great opportunity.
You know what though? Without Goodpaster, you wouldn't have talked to Don Horn. So, all right, guys.
You're right. I wouldn't have.
Steve, that's what I meant. That's what I meant when I said that about him in the opening. Mike helped make that happen, and I'm happy for you. And Mike made that happen, and that's what I meant by that.
All right. Well, I'm going to forge ahead here. I'm going to ask a couple questions of you.
Oh man.
Sure. I'm trying, Mike.
All right. You watched Torrey Pines this week. Where are we getting with Tiger winning a major this year?
Oh, wow. I watched a little of it.
I mean, he looked pretty good. I'll tell you what, he came out stronger than I thought he would. He finished 10 under par. He showed 67. He showed sharpness, crispness, resolve. He rolled himself. He did not play great. He did not hit his irons very well. But he's got his will to win back. And we know he prepares to win. But he has his will to win back. So can he will himself to a major?
Yes. If you'd asked me this, obviously, a year and a half, 2 years ago, no. But the things that have happened, talk about changing landscapes from NBA. We've talked about that. Tiger's a changing landscape. You have to adjust your thoughts. He's done everything he needed to do. And with the -5 on Sunday, his odds now are 14-1.
To win a major.
Masters.
Win the Masters.
No, to win the next.
Who's the leader? Who's on top of the board right now?
You know what? I just saw those yesterday for the first time, and I went right to Tiger. I wanted to see what his odds were. I did not look at the top of it.
Probably Spieth. I would guess Spieth would be up there.
Yeah, I don't think he's a favorite, but I mean, there were Tiger was. I remember was 14, and I thought, you know what, this guy's going to get one of these this year. He's going to get one, and that was pretty. He shot pretty darn good, and that was not a bad tournament. The winner of that tournament, I just toyed with him, so.
Yeah, and I know Mike's got something else he's got to get done for the website and show, so we got to let Mike go. But one last question: is Tiger the favorite bet? I mean, is he somebody that people like to bet on?
Absolutely. I mean, the gallery he has shows up at the windows too. I mean, I think that guy is so popular and is well liked, and I think things have changed for him. To where there was a lot of sentiment that he'd never win one again, and people, but now here all of a sudden I think it's coming back, and they work that into the odds too. I mean, they anticipate that he's going to get more action than because he's Tiger, and they anticipate that. So you don't.
Last question, because I know Mike's got another call he's got to take, and he's got some more work to do for the site. Do most people bet on Tiger to win or to lose?
I think this now probably to win. I think there was a period of time. That's a great question. There was a period of time where they bet against him, getting better odds than some of the other golfers because of the value. There was no value, But now all of a sudden, I think it's flipped, and he's becoming a sentiment for people to bet on. So
well, I mean, it shows the staying power of greatness. I mean, Jordan, Woods, Brady. Mike will hate this, but Manning, guys that consistently win, you believe that they can win, and you bet on them to win.
Jeez.
You want them to win,
no doubt.
I mean, I want New England. No doubt. I'm living in LA, but I kind of want I want New England to win. I want Brady and Belichick to do it one more time, and just prove that they are the greatest. They're the GOATs. I want them to win.
Yeah,
and I'm living in LA. Yeah, I respect the greatness of that franchise.
It's part of sports, part of
it is.
So, no, good stuff.
Why it's so painful to be an IU fan, an IU basketball fan, because we know the greatness that program once had, and you don't see it anymore, and it's not the same program. But you still want Indiana to win because they belong up there in the mix. Yeah.
And I just want to say, in all seriousness, I'm really looking forward to listening to your interview. Coming from you and the way you said that, that speaks volumes. So that's going to be neat, and that's, really looking forward to getting off air and getting on and checking that interview out.
Well, let me let that happen. Mike, you want to wrap the show up, buddy? We've been on long enough.
All right. We will be back tomorrow at noon. We will have a special guest.
Mike, I got one thing.
What?
I had a great time today talking to Don Horn. That's all I want to say.
Good for you. All right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up. Thursday, Levon Kirkland. Friday, Rocky Bleier. So if you're a Steeler fan, I'm not.
Hell, if you're a football fan, you want to talk to Rocky Bleier. If you're an American fan, the guy's a war hero.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, we're going to wrap the show up because I'm tired of Risley talking all damn day. All right, guys, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you hear sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Bobby Sheridan, Don Horn, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.